Toni Stewart Racing's NHRA program will officially be a Dodge program for 2022 and has started rumors in regards to Dodge returning to NASCAR. Ryan Newman says he has no NASCAR plans for 2022 in regards in the Cup Series, and Cody Ware will run full-time with Rick Ware Racing in 2022. What's going, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR story to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple of paint schemes. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Spencer Boyd's 2022 rim time scheme that we're going to see in 7 races with Spencer Boyd driving to 12 for the team this year. This paint scheme looks pretty good in my opinion. I think the colors work pretty well on this car, and it's cool to see that a new sponsorship is coming into the NASCAR Campbell Truck Series for 2022. It's a pretty good paint scheme, in my honest opinion, and I'm looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Daniel Suarez's 2022 Comsco scheme that we're going to see in many races. This Comsco scheme looks really well. Kyle Sykes knows how to design cars, including this one. I think this paint scheme looks absolutely incredible, especially with the number placement. I think the colors match perfectly. Comsco, of course, has had a long-term relationship with Daniel Suarez throughout his career so far. So I think this paint scheme overall looks really awesome. And overall, I'm looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack in 2022 for many races. I think this paint scheme looks pretty good in my honest opinion. And the final paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Ryan Blaney's 2022 Advanced Auto Parts scheme. This paint scheme looks really good in my opinion, and one thing I really like about this paint scheme is the fact that they are changing up to make it look black. They've usually had red on the color on the car, but I love the black background. I think the number placement also works very perfectly, and I think they do overall a very solid job in regards to the sponsor placement on that. So I think it looks really awesome, and I think this paint scheme looks great, and I'm looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Liberty University. As Liberty University, of course, they will be sponsoring William Byron for 12 races in 2022. They have a contract for 5 years with Hendrick Motorsports. Here are the 12 races that they are going to sponsor William Byron in 2022. They'll start off by sponsoring him at Landon Motor Speedway, then they will sponsor him at the first Richmond race, then they'll sponsor Bristol Dirt, and then they'll sponsor him at Talladega, and then they will sponsor at the All-Stars, and then, of course, they'll sponsor at the Coke 600. Then they'll take a little bit of a break, and then they'll sponsor him at New Hampshire, then at Michigan, then the second Richmond race, then Kansas, then Homestead, and Martinsville. Like I mentioned, Liberty University has a 5-year deal currently at the moment with this team, so I think it's very awesome that they are going to have a long-term partnership. I know that company is very controversial. We know the history of that team. They've had a lot of controversy around them. That being said, though, it's at least cool to see that a sponsor is going to be continuing to work with the team next year. I think it's really good. I'm very happy to see that at least the company is willing, even though the company is very controversial. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Live Fast Motorsports. As Live Fast Motorsports is extending its partnership with Motorsports Games into a multi-year technical partnership. The team will give feedback and assistance for console game development. Motorsports Games has had a partnership since I think 2020 or 2021 with Live Fast Motorsports, and they're extending into a multi-year partnership with the team and the organization. To me, I think this is really awesome. Live Fast Motorsports continue their partnership with Motorsports Games, but one thing I do want to mention and say is that Motorsports Games, in my personal opinion, they had a very bad game, and there have been rumors spiraling for a while now that Motorsports Games may not continue their partnership after 2022 after the issue, because there's been rumors that maybe 704, the company 704, because iRacing bought up 704 Games, there are rumors that iRacing could take over the licensing, but I do hope in the future the games do get better. That being said, though, I think it is overall pretty cool that at least they're going to have a partnership going into next year and continue a partnership that they've had throughout the years. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the updated Daytona schedule. Now, we already talked about some of the Daytona schedule, but there are some changes in regards to the Daytona schedule. So, on Tuesday, instead of 2 Cup practice sessions, there's only going to be 1 Cup practice session, and that's going to take place at 5:05 on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, there will be Cup qualifying at 8:05 Eastern. That'd be 7:05 Central Time, 5:05 for the West Coast. Then on Thursday, we'll have ARCA practice at 4:05 Eastern, followed by truck practice at 5:05 Eastern, and then the Cup dual races will take place at 7 Eastern. Now, they may not matter this year due to supply chain issues, but the Cup duels will take place on Thursday. Then on Friday, we'll have ARCA qualifying at 1:30, followed by truck qualifying at 3 p.m. Eastern. Then Xfinity Series practice will take place at 4:35 Eastern. Then Cup practice take place at 5:30 Eastern, 5:30. Then we will see truck practice and truck race at 7:30. Then on Saturday, Cup practice take place at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, followed by Xfinity Series qualifying at 11:35 Eastern. Then the ARCA race will take place at 1:30. Originally, Xfinity had taken over before ARCA, and then the Xfinity Series race will start at 5 Eastern. And then on Sunday, for the 500, it will start at 2:30 Eastern. Pretty good tentative schedule for Daytona. I think it's overall a really, really good schedule. I think the fact that they've changed it up a little bit and had Xfinity before, basically ARCA for Xfinity makes a lot of sense. I do wish that ARCA would have happened after the Xfinity Series race. I think having it more going tonight would be a really, really good transition. That being said, though, I think it overall is very, very awesome that they're going to continue to make this, and that is your schedule coming up here very, very soon for Daytona. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about a Daytona 500 tradition. Now, for the last 25 years since 1997, the Daytona 500, the winning car, would usually be put on display for the Daytona 500. Well, that may be changing in 2022. While it's not confirmed at this time, the winning Daytona 500 car may not be put on display in 2022, and it looks like it's only going to be a one-year deal. And the reason is because of the supply chain issues, and they may need to use that car for Daytona at the next week at Auto Club. This is not surprising one bit. We've heard rumors about supply chain issues. There's been a lot of teams that have been talking about these massive, massive supply chain problems. This is something that is no secret. Many, many teams currently right now only have 2 chassis for each of their cars. Some teams, of course, have 3 chassis for each of their cars, but most teams right now do not have more than 2 chassis at the moment right now, and that's because of the supply chain problems. This is nothing new. We've seen this issue in every industry you go into. There's a massive issue in regards to supply chain problems. I do think over the year, I think that this issue will be basically corrected as the year progresses, but I do think it's very interesting that they're not planning to maybe not do this next year, but at the same time, it does not surprise me one bit that they're probably not going to have this potentially Daytona 500 car on display. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. NASCAR may change their mind on this, but there's a rumor that it may end up happening here very, very soon. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some team moves that are happening for 2022. This is reported by Bob Pockers. Derek Finley has moved from overseeing competition at Front Row Motorsports to research and development at RFK Racing. Dale Charpentier has moved from JT Doherty Racing to technical director at Front Row Motorsports, and Greg Earn, who was a crew chief for a lot of the year for Matt DiBenedetto at Team Penske, is now working with Toyota TRD, working with Xfinity Series teams. There's some pretty good moves in my opinion. Derek Finley, of course, has been overseeing operations at Front Row Motorsports, and you look how good Front Row Motorsports has gotten, especially over the last year or so. I think that having Front Row Motorsports basically, have a guy like Derek Finley, losing him is going to be unfortunate, but working RFK Racing, that's a big pickup, in my opinion, for the team. Overall, I think that these overseeing moves that had to be made, sometimes you got to make some changes in regards to your teams, and overall, I think that this is a really, really good move, and I'm glad to see that these are some of the changes coming for 2022. I'm glad to see that these are some of the changes happening. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Timmy Hill. As Timmy Hill is going to be driving a 66 Chevy for NBM Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Daytona International Speedway. This is not surprising. Timmy Hill's had a long-time partnership with NBM Motorsports. We know, of course, that he's going to be running in the Daytona 500 with that team. I believe he's also going to be running all 3 races, so he's going to be going for the triple. I believe right now he's one of the only few drivers that at this moment is currently going to be attempting to run the triple. But we've seen Timmy Hill do very, very well, especially with NBM Motorsports, especially at Daytona. I think it was in 2020, 2 years ago, that he was actually able to finish in the top 5, finish, I think, 3rd or 4th. And Timmy Hill seems a guy that always gets the best out of his equipment, and I think, honestly, he's going to do very, very well with this team in 2022. I don't know how many races he's going to run, because I think he's going to mainly be focusing on racing in the Cup Series, but it would not surprise me if he does make a few one-off starts throughout the year in the Xfinity. Probably going to make quite a few starts in the Xfinity Series, but overall, I think it's really good that he is going to be returning to the team in 2022 and continue racing with the team in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Coliseum. As yesterday, they've been working on the LA Coliseum, and they're very close to having the LA Coliseum done. Of course, we're only right now 20 days technically from the start of the season, and yesterday, well, over the weekend, they decided to go ahead and install some safer barriers. Now, there have been talk, maybe they were not going to be, maybe there have been a little bit of talk, there weren't going to be safer barriers because no one knew if there were going to be, but for the LA Clash, of course, the LA Coliseum, there are going to be safer barriers. So I think that's really, really cool that at least they've gotten safer barriers installed. I think for any new track, especially for any track that's coming up, I think every racetrack out there should be able to have safer barriers. And again, I think the safer barriers look really, really awesome. And again, they've been working on this track, and they're very close to having it done. Remember, the Clash, like I mentioned, is only 20 days away. So I think everyone should be really, really excited about the Clash coming up very, very soon. I'm very happy about that. And like I said, I'm very glad to see that they have continued to work on it, and I'm glad to see that they have gone ahead and worked on that for 2022. I'm glad there's a safer barrier. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about CJ McLaughlin. CJ McLaughlin will be driving for RSS Racing in 2022 for 13 races, driving the number 38 car, and will drive the car at least at Daytona and 12 other races. CJ McLaughlin has had a pretty long time partnership with RSS Racing. He's drove for the team the last couple of years, albeit though his runs have not been really, really impressive. I think CJ McLaughlin does have some decent talent. I'm not denying his talent. The guy can definitely wheel a car. The issue is a lot of times he get in the car and they don't perform very, very well. And I think a lot of times he is a guy that does run start and parks. That being said, we know that RSS Racing is going to be a two-car team. We know that Parker Reslev is going to drive his 38 car for multiple races, and we also now know that CJ McLaughlin is going to be in it. Remember, RSS Racing is also getting a technical partnership with Stewart Racing heading into next year, and again, I think that this is a really big pickup for the team. I think ultimately for CJ McLaughlin, just finish the races, get as much experience as you can, because I think this is the most races he has ran in a single season, so he's going to get a lot of experience and is going to be able to do, I think, pretty well with this team. Overall, I'm very excited to see what CJ McLaughlin can do, and hopefully with RSS Racing, he can go out there and have, in my opinion, a really, really strong performance. So hopefully, if he can do very, very well, and hopefully he can get some good finishes here throughout the 2022 season. I hope he does very, very well in 2022 with this team. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Gustin. As Gustin is going to be competing in the ARCA Series part-time in 2022, driving the 55 for Venturini Motorsports. As of right now, he's only planning to run 3 races with the team. However, there is talk and discussion that Gustin could run more than 3 races for this team heading into 2022. Gustin, of course, has ran in ARCA, and he's also ran in the Truck Series. He hasn't ran that much over the last year or so, but this, in my opinion, is a big pickup for the team, considering that I believe he'll be running this car in the Daytona race. So, and you look how good Gustin's been at Super Speedways. I believe he has a win on a Super Speedway in the ARCA Series. I think it was at Talladega, though, but still, I think he does have a win in the ARCA Series on a Super Speedway. So, to me, I think that this is a massive, massive pickup for the team, and having Gustin come on and work with his team throughout the year, a driver who has a lot of experience, especially in ARCA, and it also will help the size of the field too, I think is really, really awesome. And like I said, I'm very, very happy to see that Gustin will be competing part-time in the ARCA Series in 2022. I think this is a big pickup for the team. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Team Penske. As it was revealed this past Wednesday that Team Penske is going to be competing in the World Endurance Championship in 2022. They'll be fielding LMP2 entry for 2022 with Porsche, and the 3 drivers that they will be fielding as they get ready for 2023. They will have 3 drivers on their team. They will have Dane Cameron and Philippe Nasser, and Emmanuel Collar will be the 3 drivers that are driving for the team. All 3 drivers, in my opinion, are very, very spectacular. I believe that Philippe Nasser came from the Action Express team last year, and a guy, of course, raced in Formula 1. I think all 3 of these drivers are drivers that I think are going to do very, very well this year with the LMP2 group, and I would not be surprised, in considering how good this lineup is, it would not shock me if this team would all go out and overall win the races. So, like I said, I'm overall very excited to see what they can do next year with Team Penske. And like I said, I'm very happy that Team Penske will be competing in the World Endurance Championship in 2022 as a plan for the LMDH programs in Porsche for 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Toni Breidinger. As Toni Breidinger will be competing full-time in ARCA in 2022, driving the number 25 for Venturini Motorsports. I think Toni Breidinger is a very interesting driver. She hasn't done fantastic with the Venturini Motorsports group. I think it's cool that she is racing in the series. Don't get me wrong, because representation of the sport is really, really good. But her stats are not very impressive, and she's driven for Venturini Motorsports equipment, and she's gotten beat at times by guys like Alex Club Racing. She's gotten beaten at times by Fat Moffitt and other teams that she should not be getting beat by. When you're in a Venturini Motorsports car, especially full time, you're going to have really, really high expectations. And I know that she doesn't is a little bit inexperienced, but she also does have a lot of experience with this team. So she's going to be expected to perform very, very well considering the car that she's in. So she's going to have to perform very, very well. For me, I got to see a little bit more competition, a little more contention for her than I've seen. I got to see some top fives, and I got to see her contend for wins a little bit. I know there's a high expectations for her, but you are in a Venturini Motorsports car, and these are the best cars in the field, and you're going to be expected to perform very, very well with the team. So she's going to have to perform very, very well. I think it's cool that she's in the series, don't get me wrong, but she's going to be expected to perform very, very well with this team. So hopefully she can do very, very well, and hopefully she does well enough to get some good runs with this team. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Conor Daly. As Conor Daly will drive full-time with Ed Carpenter Racing in 2022, driving the number 20 car with Bit Nile as a sponsorship, as they will believe sponsor Conor Daly for multiple years. Conor Daly originally was not going to drive this 20 car because U.S. Air Force backed out, and now he's back with the 20 car for Ed Carpenter Racing. I'm very, very excited for Conor Daly to be back with his teams. I think Conor Daly is an excellent talent and a very, very good driver. This is going to be the first time since 2017 where he's going to have multiple years in his first full-time season in many, many years. Of course, his highlights from last year is leading the most laps in the Indianapolis 500. He had a very, very fast car and qualified up front in that event. When I look at Conor Daly, of course, he's racing NASCAR World Truck Series, but I think that Conor Daly is a very solid and a very, very good driver. And I do think that he will do very, very well with Ed Carpenter Racing. For me, I think that going into 2022, the goal, of course, is to get as many podiums as possible. And I think he's going to have potential to do this. Of course, he's going to be working with Rinus VeeKay, who won a race in IndyCar last year at the Indianapolis Road Course. And I do think that Conor Daly, going in next year, I think he will have a very, very strong and a very, very good year. So, like I said, I'm very happy to see that Conor Daly is going to be returning to IndyCar on a full-time basis. He deserves to be back with his team. I think it would have been unfair for him to lose his ride due to the U.S. Air Force situation, but it is what it is. But it's good to see that he will return to Ed Carpenter Racing in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Robert Wickens. As Robert Wickens is officially returning to racing in 2022. That's right, after his long journey, after not being able to race for the last couple years, Robert Wickens is going to be driving in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge in Hyundai for Brian Herta Autosport. Robert Wickens' story is absolutely incredible and absolutely inspiring for everybody. In 2018 at Pocono, during that race, Robert Wickens had been having a really strong rookie season. But there was a massive and nasty crash in 2018, and unfortunately, he lost basically the ability to walk due to the injuries. He almost died on that day and was able to survive and has had an incredible comeback into motorsports. And now Robert Wickens is officially getting back into IMSA. This is absolutely incredible to see him come back after just his incredible story. Just seeing the work that he's put in and the work that he's progressed. It's absolutely inspiring, and it shows that it's never give up mentality, and people always try to give up and stuff, and it's someone right here is proving that you never give up. And to me, his story is absolutely inspiring and absolutely incredible, and the fact he's even able to race again is absolutely phenomenal and absolutely incredible. So I'm very happy to see that he is going to be returning to the racing and behind the wheel. And I hope that he can go out there and win, because if he wins, it's going to be very, very popular. So I'm very happy to see that Robert Wickens is going to be returning to IMSA competition and racing competition in 2022. Hopefully he gets to come back to IndyCar, but honestly, I don't know if he will ever come back to IndyCar, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Tony Kanaan. As Tony Kanaan is officially going to be racing in the 2022 Indianapolis 500, driving in a 5th Chip Ganassi racing car. Now, number has not been announced in regards to what number he's going to run. However, I could see them maybe like running the 40 or maybe another number that they don't currently have in their stable right now. But of course, Tony Kanaan right now is only, believe, planning to run the Indy 500 this year. He may run a couple more oval races this year. There's been talk maybe he'll run a couple of other oval races in a 5th Chip Ganassi racing car. But there's also talk maybe that Trackhouse, they can partner up with Trackhouse and maybe get an engine from there. That being said, having Tony Kanaan come back to race an IndyCar again is really, really awesome. And Tony Kanaan did say to the media today during the media availabilities, because there's basically going to be 2 days of media availabilities for IndyCar, he said that he does not want this to be the last Indy 500, despite this being the last year as of now for the Indy 500. He does not want to be running. He wants to go ahead and run more Indianapolis 500s in the future. And honestly, I don't blame him for wanting to race the Indy 500. When you look at the Indy 500, the caliber of the race, anyone that goes out there and wins the Indy 500, they win in history. And of course, he's won the Indy 500 in 2013. I think if he qualifies his way in, which I think is going to be very easy considering that Chip Ganassi Racing, that team, has tended to have a lot of really fast cars in their events, and they qualify very, very well and nearly won it last year with Alex Palou. I think easily he will qualify in for the Indy 500, and I think he definitely is going to be an underdog to win the Indianapolis 500 in 2022. So overall, I'm very happy to see that he is going to be returning to Chip Ganassi Racing in 2022. Be respecting it, but it's good to see that we finally got confirmation for him, and I'm glad to see that Tony Kanaan will be returning to IndyCar and running the Indy 500 in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Frankie Muniz. Now, Frankie Muniz, for those of you who know, we've talked about the story a little bit ago that Frankie Muniz was testing an ARCA car this past week. Well, during the ARCA test, we got to see Frankie Muniz test the ARCA car for Fast Track Racing, the 01 for Fast Track Racing. Now, he actually already had a sponsor for 2022 to race in 2022, but apparently that sponsorship got denied. And he is looking to race in ARCA in 2022, but that, of course, is going to be if any sponsors will be willing to work with Frankie Muniz. Now, for a lot of you who don't know, Frankie Muniz is an actor. He played on shows like Malcolm the Middle, and I believe he was in a movie called Agent Cody Banks. So he's a guy that's been an actor, and for him to potentially come into the world of racing and race and take this very seriously, I think is really, really awesome. Of course, he has, I think, raced in other forms of racing in the past. I think he raced in, like, late model stuff earlier this year. So he's a guy that's actually really taking this very, very seriously, which anyone that takes it seriously is really, really great. And having Frankie Muniz at least do some sort of testing for the ARCA test, I think is really, really awesome. And I'm really happy to see that Frankie Muniz tested. I do hope he gets sponsored. I think he's really, really serious. Someone please sponsor Frankie Muniz so he can race, regardless if it's his own team. There's talk he may run his own team, but there's also talk he could race for Fast Track Racing this year. So overall, I think it's very, very awesome. I'm glad to see that Frankie Muniz is looking to race. I'm glad to see he was able to test in for the ARCA here. I think it's really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jeffrey Earnhardt. As Jeffrey Earnhardt was announced on Friday that he will run part-time with Sam Hunt Racing in 2022, driving the number 26. Now, Forever Lawn is going to sponsor for 4 races, but Jeff Earnhardt said on Sirius and NASCAR Radio that he's looking to potentially run 7 races in 2022. Jeff Earnhardt ran full-time last year for JD Motorsports, and his stats in 2021, I'll be perfectly honest, were not very impressive. He did not run up front in many races, but I will say that in 2021, compared to previous years, I think that JD Motorsports took a major, major backstep. They were not really good in 2021. Jeff Earnhardt is getting a massive, massive opportunity with Sam Hunt Racing. Of course, we know that Ryan Truex is going to be driving his team on a part-time basis, and having another driver who kind of has potential to show stuff is really, really good. I think Jeff Earnhardt has some talent. Yes, I know he wasn't that impressive with Joe Gibbs Racing, but when you look at Jeff Earnhardt and the caliber of his name, having him race with a team like Sam Hunt Racing, this is definitely a massive, massive upgrade for him to go to a team like Sam Hunt Racing. So, what are my overall expectations for him going into 2022? When I think of Jeff Earnhardt, I think of how much potential he has. So I think ultimately he needs to get some top 10s with Sam Hunt Racing. Because we've seen Sam Hunt Racing contend for some top 10s, and they've gotten a few top 5s with drivers like John Hunter Nemechek. So his expectations are he's going to have to contend for some top 10s and some top 15s, because I think that those cars are very, very capable of running in the top 10 and in the top 15. So he's going to have to do very, very well. He's going to be in a pretty good car, but like I said, I'm very happy to see that he does have a ride for 2022. So like I said, I'm really glad to see that again, and I'm very happy to see that at least he does have a ride for 2022, because it's good to see that he will at least have somewhere to go. Hope he can do very, very well with the Sam Hunt Racing Group in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Fox Sports and NASCAR. Now, Fox Sports NASCAR, they've been teasing some stuff in regards to the Clash. They debuted its new spot during the Buccaneers-Eagles game, hyping up the Cup Series season. They mentioned also, supported by Adam Stern too, that Fox Sports is going to take a more race-by-race topical approach to marketing NASCAR this season instead of one grand summary. I think that's a really, really good thing to do instead of just focusing on one thing, saying it's the best season ever. Focusing on the topical approach, I think that's one thing that's really, really going to help Fox, considering Fox has been struggling for the last couple years. I think focusing on one topical approach is going to be really, really good. They also mentioned that Fox will be using a new graphics package for its NASCAR coverage this year. It says it has fresh elements for the Fox Box leaderboard and studio shows. Some of the leaderboard shows you're seeing up on the screen. Now, for those of you wondering about the top left screen, yes, they got the facts wrong, but I don't think they were taking it seriously. I think they had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. having 5 Daytona 500s, Joey Logano having 3 Daytona 500s, and they got Kevin Harvick right with 1 Daytona 500. But that's one thing that they have to hopefully not get wrong is the Fox leaderboard. One other thing I want to talk about, though, is can we please, for the love of God, stop using the freaking cartoon characters? People like myself have not been a fan of cartoon characters. And by the way, this is not something that is just with NASCAR and Fox. It's something that does with their football coverage as well. I do not like cartoon characters, whether it's for their Fox, their NFL coverage, or whether it's for their NASCAR coverage. I personally do not like the fact that they are using the cartoon characters. And I hope that at very, very soon that they can go ahead and get rid of the cartoon characters. Because to me, I think the cartoon characters are very, very cheesy. I hated them. They are a little bit better. I will say they are a little bit better. But I think the cartoon characters are really, really stupid. And it's not that difficult to do driver renderings. I understand it costs a little more money to do driver renderings. But spend a little bit more money and put more effort into your budget instead of using cartoon characters. Because they've been cutting a lot of their budget the last couple of years. And the fact that they can't get any actual driver renderings is a little bit ridiculous. But other than that, I do think some of the new things they're introducing are really, really good. But the fact that they still have those cartoon characters, little pesky cartoon characters, really gets under my groin and gets really under my skin. So hopefully they do overall get rid of those in the future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ice Cube. As was announced yesterday that Ice Cube will be performing during the race break, the halftime show of the Clash at the LA Coliseum at the halftime show. Of course, everyone knows Ice Cube is part of NWA. He's known for multiple songs, including Today Was a Good, I think it was a good day, among other songs that he has been associated with, and he's been in popular culture for many, many years. Now, don't get me wrong, I like to see someone a little bit more relevant, but Ice Cube is someone I think that is pretty relevant, and even younger kids know who Ice Cube is for the music that he's been doing, and I think he's also done some acting as well. And having a guy like Ice Cube come in who can bring cultural relevance, and people are going to see that Ice Cube is performing, and they're going to check it out. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of them having a halftime show either. I think the halftime show is very, very klutzy, and it's very, very cliche. That being said, though, having a guy like Ice Cube come in who is a caliber that he has, I think is very, very awesome. And like I said, I'm very happy to see that they are bringing Ice Cube into the show. And I think it's really, I think it's really, really awesome that they're basically bringing Ice Cube to it. And I think it's really, really cool. And I'm glad they're bringing Ice Cube in. Hopefully he can do really, really well performing. I know it's been a while. I don't know how much performance he's had. Of course, they've got other people coming in to work with it. I think Pitbull's going to be performing before the race. I think he's going to be performing before the race happens. So Pitbull's going to be performing. So you have two guys that are kind of legends, iconic to the rap game and the rap scene. And I'm overall very, very happy to see that they are going to be performing in 2022. So I think this is really, really awesome. And I'm glad to see that he will be able to perform in 2022 at the halftime show. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Landon Cassill. As Landon Cassill is going to be driving to 77 for Spire Motorsports in the Busch Clash. Now, Landon Cassill, of course, did this past week test an action car at Daytona, and he's expected to run multiple races with this team for 2022. Of course, we know that Josh Blicky is going to be driving to 77 for most of the year for a majority of races, but there will be a few races where Landon Cassill is going to race. There is talk currently as well that Landon Cassill will be running in the Daytona 500 for Spire Motorsports as well. To me, when I look at Landon Cassill, I think this is a really, really great opportunity. I expect that Voyager will sponsor him in this race as well. And it doesn't surprise me considering the fact that Landon Cassill does have somewhat of a partnership with the Spire Motorsports Group. He is a Spire client. And, of course, he'll be driving full-time this year with the College Racing team on a full-time basis with that Voyager sponsorship. So he's going to have some pretty decent expectations. He's going to be in a pretty decent cars. I do think the Spire Motorsports going to 2022. I do think they're overall going to improve. So ultimately, I think that Landon Cassill has a really, really strong shot of competing for maybe some top 15s. Of course, he is going to have to qualify into the race by getting through the heats, but if he can qualify his way and race his way through the heats, I think that's going to be really, really good, and I'm glad to see that he will be running the 77 car for the Busch Clash. We know that Josh Wiggy will be in the car for many, many races, but I believe that he will also be in that 77 car for the Daytona 500 as well. So I'm glad to see that Landon Cassill is going to be competing in the 77 for Spire Motorsports in 2022. It's really, really awesome, and I'm really happy about it overall for sure that we're going to see him in the Busch Clash. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Team Penske. It was revealed on Thursday that Team Penske has no current plans to race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022. If a sponsor comes along, they would participate. This is according to team executive Walter Sarneski, who, like I said, is the team executive. This does not really surprise me, to be honest with you, considering that they don't really have any drivers, and there have been rumors they weren't going to run full-time, but now we have official confirmation that Team Penske's NASCAR Xfinity Series program, at least for 2022, is not going to return. But at the same time, it is really unfortunate considering the fact that Team Penske's Xfinity Series program has been very, very successful. And it's very unfortunate, too, as well, considering the fact that this team made the Final Four and nearly won the championship. But it doesn't also surprise me at the same time, considering right now they really don't have any development at the moment. And their drivers they had been racing the last couple years, that being Austin Cindric, he's now a Cup Series driver in 2022, and now they really don't have a reason to run that program. And this team, of course, has a very, very illustrious history. They won the NASCAR Xfinity Series championships in 2010 and 2020, 2010 with Brad Keselowski, and in 2020 with Austin Cindric. And the fact that only 2 years later they're not even going to be in Xfinity is really, really unfortunate. There have been talk maybe they run part-time, and they could still run part-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022. But, again, it's not entirely surprising. They don't really have a lot of people in the Ford development program right now, and one of the drivers everyone talked about, Ernie Francis Jr., who was rumored to maybe go there, he's now racing full-time at Indy Lights next year, so you don't have him to go there next year. And on top of that, it doesn't entirely surprise me one bit that the Team Penske Xfinity Series program isn't going to be returning next year. But again, it is really, really unfortunate with the history of this team. They've won races with drivers like Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, Brad Keselowski, among other drivers who driven for the team, AJ Allmendinger, who's driven for the team. Again, it's really, really unfortunate the Team Penske Xfinity Series program is not returning. But in the same token, I'm also not entirely surprised. So, and they could still races here, but honestly, I don't think Team Penske's Xfinity Series program is going to race. And again, it is very, very fortunate they're probably not going to race in 2022, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Cody Ware. As Cody Ware was officially announced on Friday that he will drive full-time for RSS Racing in the Cup Series in 2022, driving the number 51 car. I believe if Nurtec as a sponsor for the team. This does not surprise me one bit. It's been rumored for a while that Cody Ware was going to go full-time with this team for 2022. This does not surprise me. The other team, the 15 team, is going to be a team with multiple drivers. We know David Reagan's going to run a couple races with the team, including Daytona 500, and Ryan Preece also has been confirmed with the team as well. But again, it does not surprise me. Cody Ware had said a few months ago that he basically wanted to just focus on racing in the Cup Series next year and not really focus on racing in IMSA or IndyCar in 2022. So it does not surprise me one bit that he is going full-time. That being said, though, Cody Ware won. Hope he declares for the points because, again, he did almost run full-time last year, but did not declare for the points. But one thing I'm hoping for Cody Ware going into 2022 is I hope that Cody Ware can perform a little bit better than he did in 2021. Because in 2021, Cody Ware absolutely struggled. Now, I do think he will be a little bit better this year because, of course, RSS Racing has announced a partnership with SHR that they're going to be having starting in 2022. I do think that is going to improve RSS Racing by quite a bit, and I do think, especially on road courses, which I think will be a good thing, that will help him in 2022. I think that hopefully he can come in there and improve with this team because his expectations, like I said, are going to be a little bit higher than last year because he does have quite a bit of experience. And again, he is going full-time with the team. He's going to have some pretty high expectations. And one thing, of course, is try to get some top 15s, some top 20s. I know those are high expectations, but they are getting a partnership with SHR. So hopefully going into next year, they can do very, very well. And like I said, I'm very happy to see that Cody Ware is going to be driving full-time with the team in 2022, and I'm glad to see he's going to be back with the team on a full-time basis. Good luck to him because, again, his expectations are going to be very, very high. And, again, it's good to see at least someone is going to be running full-time with the team. I thought maybe they would have 2 full-time drivers with Rick Ware Racing, but I do think it's important to at least have 1 full-time driver in the team, and it makes a lot of sense considering Cody is the son of Rick, so it makes a ton of sense for him to be full-time, and I'm glad to see that he'll be full-time with the team this year. He will have some pretty high expectations of the team, so good luck to Cody Ware heading into the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series season with Rick Ware and the 51 team. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of 3 major stories of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Brandon Brown and LGB coin situation. Now, we've talked about this situation for a very, very long time, but this past week on Thursday, Brandon Brown decided to release a response statement to the LGB coin situation. Here is the statement. He said, after receiving an overwhelming amount of hate, I've tried to take a break from social media for the last few weeks and focus my efforts on more productive things to prepare for the season. Unfortunately, something that can't be ignored any longer is the notion that all of our 2021 partners dropped us after we won Talladega. This is a miscommunication that I never intended to be portrayed. After the final race of the 2021 season, I didn't have any deals signed heading into 2022. Not because my partners had left, but because we hadn't crafted any contracts yet to distribute. Then, as the offseason continued, the LGB Coin.io team presented what felt like a dream come true offer. And for anyone that knew how close we were, we came to close our doors at the beginning of 2021. This was an opportunity of a lifetime. It meant that I wasn't going to have to consistently worry about trying to piece together partnerships and stress over how we would find an entire season. The partnership opportunity that LGB Coin.io have provided myself in BMS now gives us the capital to expand our organization, better our equipment, centralize our organization to one race shop located in the heart of motorsports, and relieve the worry that any of us have asked from time to time, which is, are we going to be employed for the whole season? He continued by saying, for me, a big goal and still is to change the narrative of what LGB means. I would like it to become a constructive voice for those like myself, who land somewhere in the middle and views that align with both sides. I want it to be something positive and constructive, not divisive. He then finally said, to all my partners, past and present, who have supported myself in BMS, I would like to apologize and accept responsibility for the way that this off-season transition had been handled. I've been overwhelmed with every emotion possible throughout the month of December, and my neglect to properly inform each of you of our 2022 plans is inexcusable. I would like to seriously thank each and every one of you for keeping me on the racetrack as long as you have, and I told you all in my highest regards as people who stuck up for me and allowed me to continue chasing my dreams. I am forever grateful. Overall, reading that statement, I think that the statement actually is very, very good. I will criticize one thing, and it's that third paragraph. I think the other paragraphs are really, really good, but I will criticize the third paragraph in regards to the LGB situation. Even though he's trying to change the name to make it about himself, let's be for real, everyone in the country knows what LGB means, and LGB means a certain thing I'm not going to say. It's basically a criticism of the president. I know what he's trying to say here, and I kind of understand and get it, but at the same time, you pretty much, anyone that is interested in the political world knows what LGB means. It's a criticism of the president of the United States. But I will say everything else, I'm glad that he basically took responsibility. I think his statement's really, really good. I know some people basically went out and criticized him on Twitter. So a lot of people going out and criticizing him on Twitter. But to me, other than that third paragraph, I think the statement's very, very well. And I'm glad he decided to accept responsibility. And I don't blame him for getting off of social media. The last couple weeks, especially on social media, with this, how big this story has been, is absolutely crazy. And I will say a lot of sponsors that were willing to work with him and have been working on all the partners that work with him, they basically accepted his apology. Larry's Hard Lemonade, I think they quoted on the situation saying that we're going to have your back regardless. Multiple other partners that basically said, we basically appreciate you coming out and basically taking responsibility. And that's one thing I think a lot of people are saying is he took responsibility for this whole situation. And we know that LGBTcoin.io, they of course are going to be a partner for him this year, and basically like an investment partner for like $5 million. They're going to give him some decent amount of money, which is really, really good regardless. But this whole situation has been absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy. And hopefully we are done talking about the situation. I'm glad that he finally did release a statement in regards to the situation. And I know that a lot of people and partners probably were not happy with this whole situation. We had, of course, some partners that did respond overall to the situation. That being said, though, I'm really, really happy that Brandon Brown at least was able to respond to the situation very, very carefully, and I'm glad to see that he was able to talk about it, and I'm glad to see that we got seats, and I appreciate his statement. Hopefully, we are done talking about this LGB coin situation, and we can move on and focus on, and they can focus on getting ready for the 2022 season, because the 2022 season for Xfinity is only about 33 days away, so we're close to starting the NASCAR Xfinity Series season for 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Ryan Newman. Now, Ryan Newman was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio earlier this week, speaking to Claire B. Lane. And he says that earlier this week on SiriusXM NASCAR that he does not have any NASCAR ride for 2022. Also plans to do grassroots racing in 2022. Now, Ryan Newman, of course, this past week was competing in the Chili Bowl Nationals. I don't remember where exactly he finished in the Chili Bowl National. I think he either got to the C or the D main. He got really, really far. He says he plans maybe to do some NASCAR really modified tour stuff maybe throughout the year and some grassroots racing right now, but he does not have any plans to race in 2022. This does not entirely surprise me. Of course, we know that Ryan Newman, he's not going to be returning to the NASCAR Cup Series in 2022. He had a deal with RSS Racing for 2021, and there have been rumors that maybe he was going to drive part-time for the team in 2022 in a third potential RFK car, but unfortunately, those deals had unfortunately fell through for Ryan Newman to not drive for the team because they wanted to focus on only having 2 cars in the charter cars, and it makes a lot of sense considering the fact of the supply chain issues. It makes a lot of sense that they were not going to run in more of the cars than they currently had. If Ryan Newman is not returning to the Cup Series, Ryan Newman's career is absolutely pretty good. I think one of the more underrated NASCAR Cup Series careers. Ryan Newman, I think, has 17 or 18 Cup Series victories, had won like 40 or 50 poles. Everyone calls him Rocket Man because he won so many poles, especially in the early 2000s. Of course, known for winning 8 races in 2003. Drove for Team Penske for most of the first half of his career. Won the Daytona 500 in 2008 for the team. Then went to Stewart Racing, got a win in 2010 at Phoenix, got a win in 2011 at New Hampshire. 2012, I think he almost won races, and in 2013 won the Brickyard and was able to make the playoffs in 2013 before leaving to go to Richard Childress Racing, nearly winning the championship in an upset in 2014. Then in 2017, picking up his final career Cup Series victory. Then after 2018, left Richard Childress Racing. And then in 2019, went over to Roush Fenway Racing, where he made the playoffs in 2019, getting into the round of 12. But I do think that crash in 2020 really affected Ryan Newman's stance. He did improve slightly in 2021, albeit by not much, but he did improve on a slight basis by getting some more top 5s and some more top 10s throughout the season. But you look at Ryan Newman's age, and Ryan Newman is 44 or 45 years old, and he wants to spend more time with his family and spend more time with his kids, which makes a lot more sense. A driver, especially as old as he is, it makes a lot of sense to kind of want to focus on that kind of stuff. And being for a guy like Ryan Newman, who's had a pretty successful career, I think it's really, it's unfortunate he isn't probably going to be in the Cup Series in 2021 too, but it does not entirely surprise me considering who's going to want to hire Ryan Newman right now. There's not really any rides that are currently available right now at this given moment. So, like I said, it is very, very unfortunate that Ryan Newman does not have a ride for 2022 as of now. I would like to see Ryan Newman maybe get a one-off ride for 2022. I'd like to see him get an opportunity, maybe race for like a one-off, maybe like Rick Ware Racing, because I know Rick Ware Racing's 15 car. They don't have all the races filed, but we know Ryan Preece driving a few races. David Rayton's going to be in the car for a few races. And then, of course, probably people like James Davis and Garrett Smith, Joey Gase, among those guys, are potentially going to get in those rides for 2022. That being said, though, again, it's very, very unfortunate he probably won't have a ride for 2022, but it is what it is. And I hope Ryan Newman can at least make a one-off return in the NASCAR Cup Series, because if he is officially out again, he never said he's retiring from the NASCAR Cup Series, because he still said it is very possible that he could return to the NASCAR Cup Series. But if this is it for Ryan Newman, it definitely is very, very unfortunate, because, again, I'd like to see Ryan Newman at least get set up in a much, much better way. And hopefully Ryan Newman, again, will have an opportunity to race maybe for another team at some point in the future in the Cup Series, maybe like a one-off in like Bristol Dirt, maybe runs the Truck Series for that DCC racing team that he ran for, attempt to qualify for the Truck Series race at Bristol Dirt. Unfortunately, that race got rained out, so he never got a chance to race in the main event. But I hope Ryan Newman gets to have at least a send-off, at least gets to have some one-off opportunity in the Cup Series, and maybe makes a one-off return. So I think he, unfortunately, kind of ended his career on a sour note. But this might be it for Ryan Newman, and maybe Ryan Newman may not return to the Cup Series, but hopefully Ryan Newman can return to the Cup Series at some point, maybe make a one-off return, maybe this year in 2022. But honestly, I don't think he will make that one-off return in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Toni Stewart Racing. As Toni Stewart Racing's drag racing manufacturer was officially unveiled this past Friday, as they are going to be officially have a partnership with Dodge Mopar in the NHRA, the National Highway Association, in the NHRA. Makes a lot of sense. Both drivers that are driving for the team next year, that being Leah Pruitt and Matt Hagan, they are two drivers that are part of that Dodge Mopar effort. And it makes a lot of sense that they are working with them next year. And I do think a Dodge and Mopar in the NHRA, I do think it is the best overall team. Both drivers in NHRA, I think, are going to be very, very competitive in 2022 in the NHRA. I think that they're going to be very, very fast throughout the year, and I think they will contend for championships. And having Toni Stewart in the NHRA next year, I think is absolutely incredible. He's in a lot of other racing series. Of course, he's in dirt. Of course, has a Cup Series team that had a little bit of an up and down year this past year, and having them in NHRA, I think is really, really impressive. But this has definitely opened up the talks a lot more about Dodge's potential return to NASCAR. We've talked about this for a while, that Dodge could possibly return to NASCAR as early as 2024, 2025. NASCAR said this during their State of the Sport address that they had during the championship weekend, that they have been talking to a potential third manufacturer, and they said Dodge may or may not be the manufacturer. They said, we're not denying it, we're not saying what's going to happen, we're not denying it, but we've heard that Dodge could return to NASCAR as early as a new engine configuration. Now, there are a few factors that could hurt the possibility of Dodge coming back. Of course, there is a new hybrid. They're getting rid of the Challenger and the Charger after 2024, and they're going to a new hybrids car for 2024, a new electric vehicle for 2024, 2025. But we do know that NASCAR is working on a new engine for 2024-2025 that is going to have certain electric components for 2024 and 2025. So it's very, very possible that they could return as early as that given point, which I think that they are going to come back to NASCAR. I believe that they're going to return. Now, the big question in regards, well, first thing I want to say before I talk about the teams, I think Dodge coming back to NASCAR, one, will make the sport very, very happy. A lot of people that are fans of Dodge that love the sport, they're going to have a reason to come back now and have one less excuse to make its return. Having Dodge potentially come back to sport is really, really good. And I think it's going to help the fact that they are a company that wants more horsepower. And of course, NASCAR increasing horsepower on the intermediate tracks up to 670 horsepower. That being said, though, let's talk a little about some potential teams that could switch over to this. And I do think that links more to Toni Stewart Racing, Stewart-Haas Racing. Stewart-Haas Racing, let's talk about this. Now, for a lot of people saying, of course, you have multiple teams that do run different manufacturers in other respective series. You've got Team Penske, who has a Chevy team in IndyCar. And of course, they have a Porsche in the LMP2. And of course, you had Chip Ganassi Racing and Hondas in IndyCar. And of course, they had Chevys in the NASCAR Cup Series and the Xfinity Series when they raced there as well. That being said, though, there are a few reasons why it's very, very possible this could happen. Number one, Toni Stewart has not been very, very happy with Ford. Toni Stewart really wanted to pick up Kyle Larson, and they wanted to bring Kyle Larson to this team in 2021, but they were not able to budge and get him onto the organization for 2021. And then Kyle Larson went on to win 10 races in 2021. Meanwhile, Toni Stewart's and SHR, they had their worst Cup Series season to date, only scoring one victory, while Kyle Larson went on to win 10 races in the NASCAR Cup Series and went on to win the championship for Hendrick Motorsports, where he'll remain there for many, many years. And then Toni Stewart basically sent out a tweet saying, congratulations to the best race car driver I have ever seen, calling Kyle Larson the best race car driver he has ever seen. Another reason why this potentially could happen for Stewart-Haas Racing to switch over to Dodge in 2022 is the fact that they now have a partnership with Dodge and they're in the Dodge family. And I know that Gene Haas is going to have some of the decision-making in regards to potentially them going over there, but you're going to have Dodge, Toni Stewart working with the Dodge, and they're not just basically having them as a manufacturer, they're sponsoring Toni Stewart Racing. So Dodge will be willing to put a lot of money in to Stewart-Haas Racing right there. And then the other question that comes up is what other team could switch over to that different manufacturer? Another team that switches over to me will be Rick Ware Racing. Rick Ware Racing, they have a technical partnership with SHR that at least goes for the next 2 years, but they right now potentially could extend that partnership starting in 2024 and continue working on that partnership. Plus, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, they do have a Penny Series team that has Dodge. Andrew Ranger drives for that team. They have Penny Series right now. So, of course, Dodge would basically work with both those teams, and you have two flagship teams to work with, and SHR, of course, being the flagship team. And it really makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Look at Chevy. You've got Chevy right now has Hendrick Motorsports as the top team. For the NASCAR, for the Fords, you've got Team Penske right now. And, of course, you have other teams in Ford right now. You got Front Row Motorsports and other teams, and RFK Racing now. You got three teams that are probably above the pegging order of Stewart-Haas Racing. And then you've got Toyota that has Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota. Having Stewart-Haas Racing potentially be the lead team, it could potentially put them back as the top overall organization with the team. So I think it will happen. I think Dodge will come back, and I do believe that SHR and Rico Racing will be the two teams that go with them. They're going to have multiple teams go with them. And I would not be surprised if Live Fast Motorsports, considering they have a partnership with SHR, I would not be surprised if they would switch over as well for 2024, 2025. I know the sport's going to be different in 4 or 5 years, so anything can definitely happen in the next couple years, but I think that Stewart-Haas Racing or Dodge will come back to NASCAR, and I believe that SHR will be one of those teams, and I think Rickor will be another team that switches over to Dodge if they do come back in 2024, 2025. So, anyway, that is for today's NASCAR and other motorsports stories onto the channel. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notification on to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page as well. Links scheduled below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about Dodge's potential return to NASCAR? Do you think they're going to return or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories we discussed here today on the channel? Let me know in the comments below. I've got some other products that are on the way, and if you guys have noticed, I've been feeling a little bit ill over the last week. That's why I've been a little bit touchy and all that stuff in this video, so I kind of apologize for that. I have a little bit of drainage currently at the moment, so I've not been feeling very, very well. So be a little bit patient with me, because I've not been feeling very, very well. But anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.